When gaming came home from the arcades in the 1970s, it did so in the form of cartridges loaded into a home console. Whether you were a Nintendo or Sega kid, both systems operated the same way, with the differences between the two really being the technical specs, controller design, and the library of games that were exclusive to each system. What players would perceive as the personality or style of each console was defined by its look and the way its games felt. Nintendo was often seen as the less mature brand to Sega, with a larger emphasis on family-friendly games, whereas Sega was seen to be edgier and more rebellious in its titles. What's important to note here is that while the games had developed a feel that defined the consoles themselves didn't yet have an identity outside of what colors they chose. This would slowly start to change as time went on and more systems entered the market with more features. The first thing to note that really began to give the consoles a unique feel was the addition of the startup screen. Where starting the game on an 8 or 16-bit console was as immediate as turning the system on, with the advent of 3D graphics, developers started to make it more of an event to start a game. These few seconds of excitement before you got into a game added so much more to the experience. What seems like such a small thing has led to each generation of consoles trying to one-up their previous version. More features such as online connectivity and storage management gave players some more time outside of the game to experience the console's unique user interface. The Sega Dreamcast and original Xbox were among the first to feature reliable internet connectivity. Because of this, the need to be able to navigate features that were available on the console itself and outside of the games was becoming greater. That original Xbox was a major leap forward into what we're used to now. But it was the 7th generation of consoles that really developed that out-of-game experience into what we're used to now. Customizable avatars and backgrounds, downloadable content stores, online multiplayer services, and eventually streaming services would all become available on home consoles. With so many features being pioneered in this generation, the way that players were able to navigate menus to find these features and enhance the enjoyment of their gaming experience was so much more important. The people behind those systems needed a UI that was not just easy to navigate, but was also satisfying and gave the console its own individual aesthetic. In the previous generation, Nintendo, the company that saved the entire industry by reviving the home console market, had taken a massive blow from the poor financial performance of the GameCube compared to the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. In order to get back on top, the philosophy that the designers went in with when conceptualizing their new console was to do what other consoles wouldn't. Rather than prioritizing hardware power, Nintendo would focus not just on revolutionary gameplay mechanics, but on making gaming less exclusive to die-hard players and opening up the door to all audiences. With the DS breaking new ground in their handheld market, Nintendo began work on a project codenamed Revolution, a fitting name for the console that would come from it. Like pretty much everybody I knew after watching those commercials, I had to have a Nintendo Wii. When my parents delivered on my birthday and I first booted up the console, I would make gaming memories that I'll remember for the rest of my life. The Wii's library of games is full of classics: Mario Galaxy, Super Smash Bros. Brawl, Punch-Out, Mario Kart Wii, Twilight Princess, Donkey Kong Country, and more family and party games than you can count. The Wii was special. It wasn't as powerful as the 360 or PS3 in terms of graphics, and some games suffered from the motion controls, but younger me didn't care. And while I can go on and on about the games, in this video I want to focus on where I think a lot of that magic came from. What made the Wii stand out from the crowd? Like I said, the Wii was special, and I knew it was special the very first day I turned it on and experienced this. I was a PS2 and GameCube kid before I owned a Wii. What I was used to was putting the disc in, turning the console on, watching the startup screen, and starting the game. When I started up the Wii, I was bombarded with features that I had never had on a console before. A shop channel, weather, news, all these blank spots. What was this? This is the Wii Menu, and its development was led by Takashi Aoyama in a project called the Console Feature Realization Project, with the goal of giving players a screen that could run in a low power mode for long periods of time and have unique features that players would be interested in outside of gameplay. For me, this project was a success. No joke, I could spend hours just sitting on this screen, and I did. In between games, there was no need to turn the console off like before. My brothers and I could stop playing Smash and eat lunch while this played in the background. The simplicity in its visuals and layout is still brilliant to me. It's so easy to tell what each channel is and where to find each setting. The white backgrounds are a great backdrop to the individual channels, each of them contrasting against it with bright colors. Everything on the system just felt sleek and simple. The cursors were all differently colored and numbered to differentiate from the different players on screen all at once, and all of them cast faint shadows over the background to further separate them from it. A lot of UI today identifies what icon you're selecting by either enlarging it or adding a border around it. And while I think that works just fine, I often find that older generations lose track of where their cursor is on screen from time to time. This wasn't a problem on the Wii, and was one of the main reasons that when streaming became available on it, my parents had no difficulty using the Wii to stream movies. In this way, Nintendo succeeded in pulling in a more casual audience to the Wii and not just hardcore gamers. I ended up getting an Xbox 360 a few years later in addition to the Wii, and it always felt like the Wii was more welcome in the living room compared to the 360. You hooked the 360 up in your bedroom and played Skyrim, GTA, or Mass Effect for hours and hours by yourself, only occasionally leaving for food. Whereas you set the Wii up in the living room and played Mario Party or Smash with your brothers, and occasionally you'd convince one of your parents to get in on it. The Wii is just a welcoming console, with features anyone would find useful, and those features are found on the channels. The Wii launched with 6 channels: the disc channel for launching your games, the Me channel, the photo channel, the Wii Shop, the forecast channel, and the news channel. The photo, forecast, and news were all cool aesthetic channels to have on display in your living room, cycling through pictures you could upload via SD card and displaying the weather or news updates. The Wii Shop featured downloadable games and content, as well as tons of other channels to add to your home menu. Though the channels all served different functions, the aesthetic established in the Wii menu was carried over into each and every one of them. Information was clearly communicated with simple visuals, and that Wii atmosphere was always present. As stated earlier, those in charge of putting these functions together had the goal of making a space that players would want to spend time outside of the game, and I don't think that there was any place outside of gameplay that my brothers and I spent more hours of our time in than the Me channel. It's so simple and so fun to make your own Me that customizing this collection of polygons to better represent you in-game, or making horrific nightmare creatures all using the same sliders and buttons, became its own game that was just included with the console. My family blew through hours making these until we had a small army, and with the amount of videos you can find on YouTube of people showing off their Me collection, it's clear that this was a very popular channel. Actually, there are a ton of videos going back years now where players have shown off everything from their home screen's layout to their Me lineup, and have even made tutorials on how to make pretty much every fictional character from Master Chief to Peter Griffin as a Me. As funny as some of this stuff is, I think it also goes to show just how much each and every Nintendo Wii console, while laid out the same with the same user interface, was made to be special in the hands of the players. Your channels were probably in a different place than mine, your selectable Mii characters were definitely going to be different, and that's all because the Wii encouraged this kind of customization. It let you do what you wanted to make it entirely yours, and its UI was so easy to use that you could do so very easily. Spend some time online and you'll find that the Nintendo Wii has developed an insanely large cult following that has only gotten stronger in the years since its generation came to an end. Separate from the games featured on the console's aesthetic style itself has a fanbase. That fanbase has dubbed this particular aesthetic Wii Core. And while I've discussed the visuals and layout that made the Wii menu and channels so accessible, I think there's one more area that I need to talk about. And I believe that without this half of the Wii's UI design being so perfect,
we wouldn't still be talking about it today.
The sounds of the Wii. The auditory feedback that you got from performing any function in the menu of any channel on this console was just perfect. I don't really even need to say much. As satisfying as the visuals were to look at, the sound design was on the exact same level. It's strange to try to describe the sounds of the Wii verbally, but the best compliment I can give them is that they all fit the action that you were performing at the time. Adjusting a setting, selecting a channel, grabbing a Mii, exiting a channel, hitting the home button on the remote mid-game, scrolling. It all just fits each action that you perform.
But underneath all the sound effects, lying perfectly in the background while you made your Mii or chose what game to download on the Wii Shop, there was the single element that I believe is why we still remember the Wii so fondly.
Let me introduce you to Kazumi Totaka. Totaka has been one of Nintendo's go-to composers since the early 90s, having been the mastermind behind the music for Mario Paint, Link's Awakening, Luigi's Mansion, and Animal Crossing, just to name a few. He's also the voice of Yoshi for crying out loud, so he already had a bit of a legacy built up before Nintendo asked him to compose what would easily become his best-known work during the development of the Wii. Kazumi Totaka composed the themes for every single one of the default channels on the Wii, and they've been stuck in my head while I've been working on this video, and that is not a complaint. I think it's worth pointing out that besides being insanely catchy, each of these themes perfectly fit the channel that they exist on. The Wii Shop theme sounds like something you'd hear in the elevator in an old department store or a mall. It also always reminded me of something that would play in the background of an infomercial.
And I don't even really have to play it. You already know what the Mii channel theme sounds like.
The reason that this theme works so well is because it's almost like there's two movements to it. The first highlights the goofiness of making a Mii character and fits right alongside their little walking sound effects and while you customize them. But the other part of the song, when the sort of strings come in, is calming and makes you feel at home with this little cast of characters that you've made. Even if you didn't own a Wii console, you've heard these themes before. They are the main reason the Wii's legacy endures so strongly today. There are 10-hour videos that exist that only play these musical themes. Remixes and song covers using these sound fonts are almost endless. Any song that you can think of has a Wii cover version. Meme edits and compilations use the Mii channel theme in the background so often that it's become their official theme song.
The Wii music is the ultimate background music. You can't escape it. And I believe in my heart of hearts that if Kazumi Totaka didn't go this hard when making the Wii music, that we wouldn't have this big of a following for a game console.
Out of every theme that was composed for the Wii, my favorite is still the one that plays over the main menu hub area. It's so minimal and isn't as easy to hum as the others, but it's the first thing that greets you when you start the console up and the last thing that you hear before you turn it off. It's inviting and so easy to leave on while you spend hours making memories on this magical console. It's from this menu that we can see the one default channel that I haven't talked about yet, the disc channel, which doesn't seem like a big deal, right? I mean, it's just the channel where you start the game. There can't be that much to say about it.
Well, count on me to talk for too long about something because, in my opinion, the disc channel adds something to the experience that no other console has been able to replicate since. A whole other level of excitement when starting a game for the first time.
Think back to before, when downloading games was commonplace on a virtual store or PC. Back then, you had to go to your local GameStop or wherever sold the newest games. You finally got a copy of Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and as your parents drive you home, to make that drive feel less like an eternity, you pore over the artwork on the case. You open up and read through the manual, taking in every detail of the game before you finally get home and put it in the console. Your hype level is already through the roof at this point, but what the Wii did with the disc channel was push that hype even further. Every single Wii release had a special screen on the disc channel for the sole purpose of just adding a little extra spice to starting up your game, and nothing compares to when you saw it for the first time. Like most everything on this console, it's such a simple thing that went such a long way. It's just a few more seconds between you and the game, but it's just enough to make that release when you finally get control that much more sweet. There are compilations of these disc channel intros on YouTube that have tons of views, and I've contributed to that because there's nothing like them.
Resident Evil 4.
Super Mario Galaxy! So, I've talked about how the Wii was special outside of gameplay with its channels and features. I've talked about how accessible its UI made those features and how appealing its UI is. We've listened to the music. I've talked about how the menu enhanced the hype right before the gameplay. But there's one more thing that separated the Wii and its style from every other console. The Wii's unique aesthetic carried over into its own series of games. Each of these titles feels like an extension of what we've gotten accustomed to in the channels, with familiar music composed by Kazumi Totaka, our Miis that we created being playable characters, and the layout of the menus being just as well designed and easy to navigate for any audience. Wii Play, Wii Fit, Wii Party, Wii Music, and the game that inspired this entire video. A game that is such a part of the Wii experience that it almost feels like one of its channels. The killer app that was included with every single Wii console, and directly contributed to the Wii being the highest selling console of its generation and the highest selling Nintendo console at that time. Wii Sports may not be considered the best game in the Wii's library, but it's one of the most beloved for a reason. It was the perfect introduction to just how this console operated. It was the first Wii game I ever played, and I kept coming back to it no matter how many games I collected because it was always the perfect option for everybody. This game is the embodiment of the Wii aesthetic. Having a baseball team fill up with your Miis that you created on your own time was something so radically new at the time. It linked the game with the console in a way that nothing had ever done before, and I think when I talk about the way the Wii looked, sounded, and felt, I'd feel completely wrong if I left out Wii Sports. And dude, the music... I don't think I could have made a video this long talking about another console's UI and menus because the Wii just did it in the most unique way. I made this video because I was feeling a little nostalgic and kind of bummed out with how current consoles don't seem to have this kind of magic anymore. I'm not against any of the newer consoles' amazing games that have come out. I love my PC and my brother has a PS5 that's insanely impressive on a technical level, but navigating through consoles just isn't as fun as it was on the Wii. The hype that I get from a new game is reduced to me just waiting for it to download. The PS5 has a sort of disc channel on it that plays some of the game's soundtrack with an image of its art, but don't try and tell me it's the same thing as the Wii's disc channel. Even my Switch, which I love, just feels so lifeless in its menus compared to its predecessor. There is something to be said about the experience of navigating the menus and features of a console, and how memorable that experience is. The Wii simply set the standard for me, and no console since has ever quite reached that level.
The Wii menu brought everybody in and showed us the new features of a new console generation. Wii Sports showed us just what this new console was capable of, and how connected it could be with its games. And from there, the door was open to make memories with all of the groundbreaking games that the Wii had in its amazing library. And that's where I'm gonna leave it to you. What were some of your favorite Wii games? What memories do you have from your time spent on the console? Did you make any weird me's like I did? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching this dumb video about a console's menu aesthetic. Thank you again, be safe, and I'll see you in the next video.